Breaking Through by Brenda Smith. Chapter 10, Inference. Here is another example of a simile because they're very common. A comparison using the words like and as. Remember, with a simile, we always use like and as. Examples. The boy plays soccer like a tiger. The boy is not a tiger, but he plays like a tiger, inferring that he is very aggressive. The next, the overcooked bread was as hard as the table. Now, the bread was obviously not as hard as a table because a table is wood or metal, so that's pretty hard. But they're comparing it by saying that you couldn't even bite into it. That's how hard it was. So that is a soft comparison to show that it's like a table in texture, but it's not actually a table. So we can infer that the bread is really hard. So using a simile is like and as, and it's a soft comparison of two things. Interpreting literary devices, figurative language. Here is our next one, a metaphor. A metaphor is a direct comparison of two things. Unlike a simile, which is soft, this is direct. For example, Grandpa had a head of snow and a warm heart. So we're not using like or as. We're using a direct comparison between Grandpa and Grandpa having hair that is white as snow, which says he has white hair, and a warm heart, which means he's very kind-hearted. So it's way more direct in nature. Metaphors. Another metaphor example is as follows. Remember, a metaphor is a directly stated comparison. It is a hard comparison, not a soft one. So look at these examples. The soccer player was a tiger. So what we're saying is the soccer player in itself, he is like a tiger, a beast, aggressive on the field. So it's not like a tiger, like a simile. He is a tiger. So that shows how strong he truly is in a direct comparison. The storm was the thief of the enchanting summer night, letting us know that the storm was so rough and so tough that it stole that summer night. So it's very aggressive. So a metaphor is way more direct than a simile. So you have to be careful because you can accidentally really insult somebody by directly comparing them to an animal or a thing or a place or a person. So you may want to soften it up by using a simile like and as instead. But both are comparisons. Reading newspaper editorials. Now remember, an editorial is a personal opinion piece. It is when an editor typically writes a story or dialogue regarding a certain issue or subject matter. So it is personally based. So you want to make sure that you're reading between the lines to really understand what that editor is saying because it's typically slanted and biased. So ask yourself these questions before you come up with a proper inference. What event prompted the editorial? Why is the author writing what they're writing? What is the opinion being promoted? There is definitely an opinion in an editorial. Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it biased? Is it fair? Is it balanced? Do the details prove the thesis? So if the editor says, I believe in X, does the material back that up? Or is it so biased and slanted that it's just an opinion piece and there's no weight, there's no substance to it? Is the author liberal or conservative? That obviously helps. If it's a liberal writing about a conservative issue, that editor is going to be highly biased, highly slanted, and you may not want to rely on that information as factual. And vice versa. A conservative writing about a liberal issue, their personal opinion may outweigh the actual facts of the material. What is left out? Often it's not what is said. That is the important information. What is someone leaving out? That is the important issues at hand. So make sure you think, what is in here and what is not in here, because what's not in here can lead you to a valid inference. And are the sources and facts credible? Or is it just your cousin down the street writing a story? Does the person have some value and legitimacy to him or her? Is it a journalist? Do they have a title like a doctorate degree or some type of degree that will back up their credibility? Or is it just some person off the street? That makes a huge difference, because we want to know that we can rely on this information before making an inference and saying, I agree or I disagree with the information presented to us. Summary points. What did we learn in this chapter about inference? What is an inference? Remember, an inference is a suggested meaning. It's not directly stated. We have to read between the lines. We have to use the clues, the facts, our prior knowledge and information to come up with an educated guess or an valid inference. Why are jokes funny? Well, jokes are funny because they're not so blunt and obvious and in your face. You actually have to infer. You have to read between the lines to be like, oh, I get it. I know what you're saying without really saying it. Therefore, it's funny. What is the effective slanted language? Remember, with denotation and connotation being emotional words, we can persuade someone with our language, and we are suggesting meaning and emotion through that language that we choose. So based on the language you choose, you are giving a meaning. Someone is picking up that meaning and they're making an inference. Hopefully, they're making an appropriate inference, which matches the meaning that you are pushing. So be very careful in the language you choose. And what are conclusions? Drawing conclusions are very, very similar to making an inference. You're using your prior knowledge, you're using clues, you're using facts, you're coming to an assumption, and then you're making a conclusion from that assumption, or you're drawing an inference. So often those are synonyms, conclusions and inferences, but both of them need prior knowledge, clues, and facts, and both of them require for you to really think, read between the lines, and then make a decision on how you feel about the material. Visit the companion website for Breaking Through by Brenda Smith. Go to www.ablongman.com/Smith and click on More Activities and Assignments to further review this information.